Hi, I'm Rachel Lancaster, and this is the Magnificent Midlife Podcast. This is where we celebrate women in midlife and beyond. We challenge the status quo and bash those negative stereotypes about being an older woman. We're not over the hill at 40, 50, 60. We're just getting started, and the world needs us now more than ever. I'll be talking all things midlife and sharing some fabulous stories of amazing women doing very cool stuff. Now's our time. My guest today is Dr Orlena Kerek. She's a pediatric doctor turned weight loss and health coach, and she knows an awful lot about helping us manage anxiety. She also lives in Spain, and she's got 4 kids, and she's been on lockdown for quite a while now. So welcome, Orlena.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So my first question to you is, because at time of recording this, the UK has just gone into a pretty full lockdown. What's it like? How can we survive this? What tips do you have? And how long have you been in lockdown?
Okay, so we have been in lockdown for nearly 2 weeks. It happened 2 weeks ago. And it was a bit of a surprise, I have to say, here in Spain. It happened quite quickly. One day we were told, the kids aren't doing inter-school activities. The next day was, it's the last day of school, but we can still do social distancing. And then the next day it was total lockdown.
Wow.
And I know, it was super quick. And my panic buying was not sufficient, but anyhow. And we're not allowed out of the house, and kids are definitely not allowed out of the house. So, I know you guys are in lockdown right now at the point of recording. You're allowed out. And I am super jealous because we're not allowed out at all.
So how do you get your food then?
Oh, yeah, sorry. We're allowed out to buy food, and we're allowed to go to pharmacies, but those are the only things. And the children aren't allowed to come with you. Children aren't allowed out of the house. And I have to say, I'm super grateful that we have a big house and we have a garden and outdoor space. But there's a lot of kids in Spain who live in flats, because a lot of people live in flats here. So it must be super tough for them. So, and I'm lucky. I think having 4 kids at times is hard work, but right now, they're just in their little world of being normality and fighting with their siblings. So, for them, it's kind of just like an extended holiday, really.
And entertaining themselves, I suppose, because they've got instant playmates to a certain extent.
Yeah, kind of. We've tried. So, you were talking about how to survive. And I think from a kid's point of view, I have found that keeping to a routine is easy. And when I say a routine, I don't mean sit down and do this and do that, but a sort of semblance of normality. We still have breakfast at the same time. We have lunch at the same time. We have dinner at the same time. We've had to adjust it a little bit. Right at the beginning, I decided that we were going to do a walk to school, which would be around the garden. And we've actually got a plot of, I know, got a plot of land next to us, which isn't ours, but nobody else uses it. And it's sort of overgrown. And I thought we could just walk around this sort of field. It's not really a field. And that would be our walk to school. But we ended up getting so soaking wet that we actually literally had to change our clothes. And I thought, this is not a great way to start the morning. So we have adapted. But, I try and get the kids out in the morning to give them some sunlight, to give them a bit of fresh air, to get them moving a little bit. And, stick to a sort of, I do a little bit of work in the morning. So mornings are schoolwork time, which obviously looks very different from being at school. But that kind of routine, so we know where we are, both for parents and for kids. So I think that's a really important thing to start off with. My kids would happily be feral and, not get changed, live in their pajamas for 3 months if I let them. So, I have to be careful not to do that. Like this morning, for example, I let them play on the bed a little bit and thought, we'll have a relaxing morning. And then obviously, you know what kids are like. You give them an inch and they take an arm. And I had to basically lay down the law and say, this isn't going to work. We have to be dressed by 8 o'clock every single morning. So,
And what about staying sane for you?
Yeah, I think, first of all, allow yourself a bit of adaptation. This is a really, it's extraordinary times. It is very stressful for everyone. Everyone has so many stresses and questions. There is a big question about, what life looks like now. For us, we didn't know. We were told 2 weeks to begin with, and now we've got another 2 weeks. What does life look like after that? We don't know. Will the kids go back to school? We don't know. A lot of people have financial stresses. Here in Spain, we've had huge problems with people. People are now not working. Something like 750,000 people are now not working at this time and not earning money at this time. So, there are lots of stresses. And on top of that, hey, we're living with our kids.
Yes, all the time.
Yeah, and as much as we love our kids are stressful, and that's fine. And I think acknowledging that is fine. So take a moment, take a breath, and allow yourself a bit of time to adapt. And I think there is an adaptation time in that what we did at the beginning worked fine, but I've made changes to how we do things. Like the not walking at 8 o'clock in the morning, we do a little bit of exercise at midday now.
Yeah.
So I think allow those emotions out a little bit. But what you don't want to do is spiral down into that negative plug hole. You know what I'm talking about? And for me, I can easily do this. I say I'm an overqualified hypochondriac, and I can think of 100 disaster things. I can think of myself going into hospital and being intubated and disaster stories. Or stop. Like, when you see that happening, just stop and recognize that it's just your brain running away with you. And I think it's really important as well to acknowledge that we do need a bit of time and space. And right at the beginning, I knew that I was snapping at my kids. That's when I know that I'm stressed, is when I'm snapping at my kids more than normal, should we say. Like things that I think just aren't important, and I'm snapping. So I really had to make time for myself last week to get on top of that. I tend to do yoga and meditation and give myself some time to do yoga and meditation. If that means sticking your kids in front of the television whilst you get on top of yourself, you have to recognize that you're the linchpin and you're holding everything together. And that's an amazing job, but it can feel a little bit daunting at times. So, I think it's a combination of find your new normal, accept that it's not perfect, and think about what is important to you right now. So I know we're going to talk about healthy eating and things, but perhaps that isn't important for you right now. So for me, last week, I had this epiphany that I essentially was nagging my children about their feet. My children run around with bare feet, and it's not warm here right now. And they wear socks. It drives me crazy. They wear socks and then they get holes in their socks. But, I'm nagging and saying, I see you haven't got your socks on. Can you put your socks on? And you get to this stage where you're like, socks are not important at this time.
Yes.
Doesn't matter about your socks. If my children want to get cold, dirty feet, just go and get cold, dirty feet, and think about what you need to maintain right now. What is it that is your goal? And for lots of people with work, some people don't have the option to say, I need to cut back on work. I've cut back on work in that, I don't have the hours that I had to do solid work because I'm juggling looking after my children and school working and things like that. So, it's thinking about prioritizing your health, your own sanity, and thinking about what's important for you and your family right now.
There's so many things to juggle, aren't there? I mean, I think I get the sense that people are slowly over here waking up to what this is. And a lot of people are still kind of in denial. And only yesterday I saw some young people who were doing the elbow bumping rather than shaking hands. And I was standing down the road and I was thinking, the time for elbow bumping is gone, kiddo. You need to be 2 meters away.
Yeah, I think it's tough though. I don't know how medical you want me to talk about, but I think when we look at the evolution of this illness, when it first came out, the message that we were being given is that it affects older people and younger people are generally safe. And I think as we see the evolution of this illness, that's not 100% true. And in Italy, they've had a lot of cases of people who have been, intubated, and I don't want to stress people out. I think it's about being realistic about this, but people in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s who have ended up being intubated. And when you get intubated with this illness, it's 3 weeks of intubation, and that's a long period of time. And and that's not talking about how the hospitals are totally overwhelmed. Intubation is when you are on a ventilator. So when you first need help, if you go into hospital, normally you go into hospital to just need some oxygen. And a lot of people will manage that. So for example, when I was working as a pediatric doctor in the UK, we would see so many kids who get unwell with asthma or breathing problems, and they need a little bit of oxygen just to keep their oxygen levels up.
Yeah.
But they're happy, they're on the ward, they've just got a little, tube that goes under their nose most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it gets more serious, there are other ways of helping you breathe. And often what people do now is they have this little machine that just blows air into your lungs. Mm-hmm. The sort of worst case scenario is that they put a tube down you and you're on a breathing machine. So, what people would call a life support machine, essentially. And that's being intubated and ventilated. That's when you're in an intensive care unit. So, there's a lot of people getting very sick. It seems like to me a very strange illness in that some people are getting it really mildly and some people aren't. And as far as I understand, nobody really understands why that is right now. And as more and more cases come, then we'll get more and more information. But right now, there's a big lot of question marks.
But my concern about the elbow bumping was more the spreading, because I'm not worried about it for myself. I'm fairly fit and healthy. I think it's the danger of the spreading. And I think it's interesting that you say your children are not even allowed out. And that's because probably they're the ones that spread it more than anybody else, even though they don't have any symptoms.
Exactly. Their children are considered super spreaders. And actually, if you look at the statistics, it's quite interesting that when we had the swine flu outbreak in 2009, they noticed that there was a peak in the UK before the school holidays. And then when all the holidays broke up, it just kind of disappeared. And then it came back again after the school holidays. And the reason is because children are little snotty noses, and they get together. Children, as far as I can work out, are totally incapable of doing anything hygienic.
Yes.
I say to my kids all the time, don't touch your nose, don't touch your face, about 100 times a day. But they just don't get it. They are constantly streaming snot and passing it on to each other. And that's what kids are like. And school is like this melting pot of lovely bugs, just, and that's why children are considered to be super spreaders. And luckily, it seems that the children aren't getting unwell. Obviously, there will be some children who are unwell, but the children aren't being hit particularly badly.
But there's a lot of young people over here who are really struggling, sort of the older kids, the teenagers and the young adults who are really sort of struggling. There was interesting, there's advice that went out today. I feel really sorry for these young people because they've been told that if they're in a new relationship, they've either got to take it virtual or move in together or end it because they can't be mixing with each other, if they're not in the family unit. But that puts enormous pressure on young people. It accelerates relationships way before you might want to be at that stage of relationship. I guess it's applicable to people of any age, isn't it? But yeah.
Yes, I hadn't really thought about that. Oh my goodness.
I know. Very, very difficult, I think. It's like, are we going to live together and we've only known each other for 5 minutes, or will we never see each other ever again?
Well, I think there will be an end to this. And, I think that's one sort of piece of advice, is that how do you manage this, in that there is a lot of unknown and there's just taking everything one day at a time. And I think that is a good idea, to just focus on today and the next day and the next day. But we will get to some stage of normality at some stage. I don't know when that will be, but this isn't forever. This isn't normal life forever and ever. Something will come out of the other end. And I think that's worth hanging on to as well, that, this isn't permanent. It is temporary, however long that temporary is.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, we will be all right in the end. The human race is designed to recover from things like this, and we will go on.
Yeah, for me, I think they'll either get a vaccination sorted out, or it will spread and everyone will become immune anyhow. Not everybody, but enough people.
So what's it like being in a foreign country under lockdown? Because everybody sort of wants to go home when things like this happen, don't they?
Well, I guess we think of this place as home now. We've been here for 9 years now. So I guess that question, I could answer it with like, what's it like moving to another country? And that's another big question. Which is, we feel this as our home. We're part of the community now, particularly because of the children. So I've got that community with the schools. We have lots of WhatsApp groups between the schools. I'm at a stage in my life where I'm a little bit more antisocial than I was when I was a student and, had loads of friends. But that's the stage of life I'm at in terms of I work from home, I've got kids, I get tired, I go to bed at 10:30. So, it's not actually that bad. They've been very, very strict in Spain. And actually, I have to say, I'm quite grateful for that. The reason they're very strict in Spain is because they had a huge, great problems down in Madrid, and we're not in Madrid. So we're a long way from the big, awful action, although it is here, it is in our local hospitals. But I quite like the fact that people have been strict, because for me, I kind of think, well, it means that we're going to be in lockdown for less time than if they aren't strict. And, I can see people breaking the rules and, taking children out, not very often, I have to say. And part of me thinks, well, that's fine. I totally understand where you're coming from. And part of me thinks, well, I would like to do that too. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I think all in all, it's fine. I did have plans to move to Italy in January, February, and March. And I'm very, very, very grateful that those did not happen. I think being in Italy as a totally foreign language where, I wouldn't be used to it, and probably being in a small flat somewhere would have been really just so much more difficult than we are now. This is our home now. And so we're used to it.
And what about if we can't sort of get all the foodstuffs that we would normally be able to access? What should we aim for as a minimum to, maintain a healthy diet in these circumstances?
Yeah, I think it depends where you are. I am all about fruit and vegetables, and I can talk to you about nutrition and healthy eating forever and ever if you want me to.
Not forever,
I think,
no, but for a little bit.
I think fruit and vegetables are the mainstay. And if you can, I think, for here, we're seeing that actually the supermarkets are being well stocked. We have a market that we go to every single week, and people are not going to the market, as in the stall holders aren't going to the market. And I suspect that's because they're scared and they don't want to go to the marketplace. So when I went to market last week, and I have to confess, I thought twice about going to market. There were not very many people there. So getting hold of fruit and vegetables for us isn't as easy as it used to be, but I can go to the supermarket. And I suspect that the vast majority of us are going to be able to get enough food to last us through. If you can go shopping weekly, you can normally do a week's shop and that will tide you through. One of the things I have really been focused on is dried beans and lentils, which I eat lots of beans and lentils anyhow. I think they're a really good source of carbohydrates, and you can sprout them as well. That is my super secret tip, is that you can take them and sprout them, so you can always have something fresh. You only need a handful and you've got something fresh. But I guess, again, it comes back to what's your priority right now. And if you're going through that stage of, okay, I'm in survival mode, then recognize that as survival mode and don't put more on top of yourself. You can always come back to healthy eating later on. And, you don't want that to spiral out of control. So one other tip I have is, I see a lot of people doing a bit of stress eating, doing a bit of boredom eating. And I think if you're going to do that, recognize it for what it is. So for me, that looks like having a beer in the sun at 5 o'clock, if there is any sun. Normally, I don't drink very much at all. And I'm not saying go out and drink loads of beer. Whatever it is for you, if it's a cake or, a bit of chocolate, but when you do it, really enjoy it and sort of twist it around a bit and say, do you know what? I'm celebrating this. I recognize it's a bit of stress, but I'm not doing this to relieve the stress. I'm doing this because I'm celebrating right now. I'm with my husband. I'm in my back garden. I'm safe. I'm enjoying this. We've got the bees. We've got the birds. I've got the blue sky. Or, well, today I haven't. But do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
That really be in there and enjoy it and go, and don't feel guilty about it. Just do it. But don't take that as an invitation to go, yeah, I'm going to go and binge and boredom eat. But those little bits that you do, recognize it for what it is and don't feel guilty. Just enjoy it.
It's about mindfulness, isn't it, really? It's about being aware of what you're doing and why you're doing it, and taking taking the moment, as you say, to celebrate it. I really like that idea. It's really good.
Thanks.
How are you you're managing your food supplies, and are you planning ahead? So are you, do you have a planning system so that you know what meals you're going to be eating when? Because I'm sort of trying to think about that. Okay, if we've got this much food and
how long is it going to
that is
last?
an interesting question. I as part of my opt-in, when you give someone a gift to come, yes. I have a whole video on the system that I have for providing my children with healthy eating. And I will explain it to you in a nutshell, is that I do things differently than other people, which is I go and buy fruit and vegetables and then I work out what I'm going to do with them, if that makes sense. So I'm not the kind of person who sits down on Sunday and goes, we're going to eat this, 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 and this. If that works for you, I think that's fabulous, but I'm not that kind of person.
Do you mean you plan first and then you buy what you need to?
No, I do the opposite.
Yes,
I buy whatever I can.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so really for me, the way I plan food is oh my goodness, what needs eating up now? What vegetables need eating up now? Which are the vegetables that are going to go off more quickly? And another thing I do is I just cook loads and loads of vegetables. So for example, if my oven is on, it's normally rammed full so that, I'm just cooking things and think, okay, well, I'm cooking, I don't know, sweet potatoes, but I'm also going to use this shelf below to cook some red peppers. We're not going to eat the red peppers today. We can have them cold tomorrow, but I've kind of done it. That's the way my mind works. And I appreciate that that isn't the way a lot of people work. And when you're very busy, I wouldn't really recommend that particular way, because often people reach for the frozen pizza. When you don't have a plan, people just go, oh my goodness, what should I do? Reach for the frozen pizza. Yeah. Well, I would say to you, if you're in that situation of reaching for the frozen pizza, reach for frozen pizza and lots of vegetables. Just add in some broccoli or some carrot sticks or some frozen peas. Just make it easy. But frozen pizza with vegetables is much better for you than frozen pizza by itself.
Yeah. And so you've been able to get all the vegetables that you need when you've been out shopping?
We have thus far. I have a very picky son who loves green apples. And normally I just buy them off the growers, but none of them were there last week at market. So I bought different apples. I got some, but I don't have as much as normal. And, my children would happily eat 3 apples a day if I let them. So, which I guess is better than eating, cookies the whole time, biscuits the whole time. So yeah, at the moment we are okay. I think from a point of view of actually, I don't really want to go out into the shops because that's where the danger is really. So I'm limiting myself. Another thing I bought was lots of dried fruit and nuts, which again, if you don't, if you ration them a little bit, just be mindful of how you're eating them, they can last quite a long time. So I have no worry about the fact that I have enough food in my cupboard to keep us going for a long period of time, if that's what we needed to. But it is that those fresh apples and pears and things, they don't last much longer than a week. So I want to make sure I'm going out once a week to get fresh fruit and vegetables. But yeah, I think that we'll be able to do that.
And in terms of, do you have any more thoughts on managing anxiety? Because I think that is a huge issue for a lot of people, I think, at the moment. Because I think we're just adapting to it now. We're only just sort of grappling with the new reality, the new normal.
Yeah, I think what works for you. So things that work for me are meditation. And I think meditation is kind of turn off your thoughts. So if you think about how emotions are created. So we have thoughts about things, which, in my case might be, oh my goodness, I'm going to end up being unwell and all of this is going to be disaster, leads to emotion. That definitely leads to the emotion of fear. And then that leads to your action, which might be, oh my goodness, I'm going to go in, drink that beer.
Yeah.
And then that leads to more thoughts. So you have this circle that goes round and round: thoughts, emotions, actions. And you can actually access any of those bits. So you can access your thoughts and how you think. You can access your emotions. Put on some music. Music's one of those amazing things that really goes directly to your emotions. Put on some sad music and you're crying. Put on some happy dancing music and work it out. And so, that's another tip. Put on some happy dancing music and go and dance and have fun. And then your actions as well. So you have to think about all of these things. So from looking at your thoughts point of view, meditation is good to sort of just turn those thoughts off for a bit. Another thing that can be really super useful is what you call a brain download. So get all of those negative thoughts on a piece of paper and look at them. And that gives you the ability to be able to stand away a little bit and be more objective and go, okay, so what's the chance of you getting unwell when you've never left the house in 2 weeks? You know what I mean? That voice of reason starts to come in, and you can look at your thoughts like that. From a point of view of sort of managing living in a house and health, I think some of the tips are, we've talked about healthy eating, and I think being mindful of healthy eating and, trying to maintain your healthy eating. I think movement is a really, really important one as well. And, our routine has been totally destroyed. I normally walk backwards and forwards to school every day. I go swimming twice a week. I do Tai Chi, I do yoga, and I'm not doing any of it now. But I can maintain a little bit of, 7-minute workouts, doing a little bit of yoga. It's not as much as normal, but that's fine. But just keeping movement, and for children as well. And get your heart rate up and try and get a little bit out of breath if you can, every single day if you can. Getting outside if you can. I know that's difficult. You guys in the UK can do that. But, getting sunlight. We need sunlight. And particularly if you can do it in the morning, if you have trouble sleeping. Sleeping's another big issue. We want to be making sure we get 8 hours sleep. And one of the things that your body needs is to see sunlight to understand when it's daytime and when it's nighttime. So if you can get out, go and do that. And I think just keeping it fun, it can be really easy to read the headlines every 5 minutes and spiral down. But we've had good amounts of fun. We've had playing rounders, not quite rounders, some kind of rounders, but it was fun. And Nerf gun wars, that was a bit of a disaster. But trying new and different things and taking this opportunity to try new things. So, for example, I found an old keyboard in our garage, which I haven't played the piano in 18 years. I'm now playing the piano and I'm loving it. And my son is playing the piano, just doing different things, taking this time to go, I can do this and we can have fun. It's not normal life, but we can still make the most of every single day and enjoy those small moments, cherish those bits, having snuggles with your kids and holding their hands and, that beer in the sun or your piece of chocolate, whatever it is, but just relish everything that you can. And then you end up spiraling upwards rather than spiraling downwards.
We've actually, I do think we are incredibly fortunate that this has happened now, because, if this had happened 20 years ago, it would have been slower moving around the world, but not that much slower. But we wouldn't have had social media to keep us both connected and informed. We wouldn't have had all the things on the internet that we can access, the free classes, like learning piano, as you talk about, lessons for dancing, for doing yoga, all online exercise programs. And also, the way that I'm recording this with you, which is through Zoom.
Yeah, exactly.
Which obviously podcast listeners won't be able to see, but, we can see each other. I record all of mine like this, so I am able to, see my guests and talk to them. And I think that is phenomenal. And so there's so many things, and not to mention Netflix and Amazon Prime and all of these things.
Exactly. And you've touched on another point, that we are social creatures, and part of our wellness and how happy we are is reflected in, that social. I noticed this when I went to market. I just chatted to 2 random people and one of them, bless her, was an old lady. And I said to her, why are you not out here? Why isn't somebody shopping for you? And she said, well, my daughters live 10 minutes away, but the motorways are blocked. We're not allowed to go in our cars even. So luckily now I think the police are doing shopping for old people. But my point was that, we're sociable and we miss that social connection with people, but we can still do that now with Zoom and FaceTime and all the messenger services that there are. So keep up your positive connections with people and don't listen to those negative. There's a lot of people who are worried and scared, and then they say things that perhaps aren't very kind, but just ignore them.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And you have your own podcast, don't you? So tell us a little bit about your podcast.
My podcast is called Fit and Fabulous at 40 and Beyond, and I help women, professional women, lose weight, but women who also want to feed their kids a healthy diet. So I recognize that can be tricky because they want to eat healthily in a way that their children aren't so keen on.
Yeah.
So on my podcast, I talk about lots of things. So like the why we should eat healthily. For me, it's more about healthy eating and living. But a lot of people want to do weight loss as well. So I combine both of them.
That's great. Well, it's been a real pleasure talking to you today. And thank you so much for taking the time to give us your insight on life in lockdown.
Thank you so much for having me. And I promise you, it's not as bad as it sounds.
No, I think, well, I'm trying to see it as my own little sort of mini personal virtual retreat. I'm weirdly quite excited about having no excuses anymore to do all the things I usually say I don't have time to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a really good way of looking at it. I think if you're there going, oh my goodness, I'm upset, and, I think adjusting, but when you start sort of battling reality, this is the reality. And I could look at the UK and go, oh, you guys are allowed out and I'm not allowed out. Where does that get me? It doesn't get me anywhere than lots of negative emotions. I'm just better off enjoying something that I can do.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Magnificent Midlife Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, share it, and leave me a review on iTunes or wherever you're listening. You can find out more information about this episode in the show notes at magnificentmidlife.com. That's also where you'll find strategies, support, and resources to help make your midlife magnificent. Why not sign up for a midlife breakthrough call with me to get clarity on how to make the most of your next chapter? Don't get stuck in what can sometimes be the messy middle. Help me change the world, one magnificent midlife woman at a time.